frightening and really difficult experiences. There are those on this call who have family members who have lost work or lost their business. I know there are those on this call who have been terribly overworked and really struggled to keep up with the workload through COVID. And so we've arrived at this point together this morning, coming from all sorts of different places, but we are together, and I'm really glad of that. I'm glad to be back. I miss terribly being together in the theater. I was thinking about what that always felt like, especially at the beginning of fall semester. And I would often be at the podium and would call for people to quiet down and take their seats, and once, twice, 3, 4, 5 times. And the energy in the room was so strong of people reconnecting, of friendships rekindled, and sharing summer stories and bursts of laughter and happiness and joy in the theater. And so I miss that. I miss that terribly. But nevertheless, I'm glad that we are back here together as we are. We could have done this live in the theater, but we didn't have to. And where we didn't have to bring a large group of people together in the same space, it felt like the best choice not to do that. So as we kick off this morning, I do want to acknowledge Cedal and Karen Summerson in particular, but Conrad Martin, the whole team from Cedal. You all have been incredibly patient with multiple changes to the programming and what we felt like we were comfortable doing this week. Seemed like we were changing something almost every day last week. And so I really appreciate your flexibility and your adaptability and your willingness to go along with all that. I also really appreciate the theme of this year's PDW: Revive, Reunite, and Re-inspire. And as I think about us gathering here together, it's not what we expected, I think, when these theme words came together, but it is where we are, and the chance to reunite and reconnect this week, the chance to inspire one another again. I'm really glad for that opportunity. So as always, my intention here is to provide a really transparent, open assessment of where the college is and what's happening at the college. I invite your questions through the chat. One of the great things that we've learned through Zoom and through the pandemic, really using Zoom and other technologies, is how to be more engaging and more connected and get more feedback and information through these processes. So put your questions into chat. Jim Mancall is, as he did last week with Town Hall, is monitoring those. We will sort of collect those at the end. I'll answer as many as I can at the end. And if we run out of time, then I'll try to address some of those through email to the whole college as well. So with that, I want to sorry, I've lost my way with my presentation. Let me get back to the beginning. And we do have new COVID protocols in place. And as we approach this fall semester, we're in, unfortunately, another time and space of things changing rapidly with COVID. So we were feeling really confident and feeling really good about where we were back about middle of July. And suddenly this Delta variant became a growing news story from around the world. And then it started to become a growing news story here on our shores and locally. So I was not happy about this. I know nobody's happy about this, but we brought back the mask requirement on campus. And I realize that not everybody agrees with this, and there is some controversy about this, but I think the preponderance of evidence suggests that masks can help us limit the transmission of COVID in indoor spaces, and in particular, as I think about it, in classrooms. So masks are required indoors on campus, and we started that back on August the 16th, and we'll be going forward with that. We're trying to do as much as we can to mitigate the negative impacts of the masks. So we've bought a large number of clear masks that we're getting distributed out to our faculty. We've also bought some special masks for our music and theater performance folks that allow people to project their voices more effectively. So for the time being, masks will be required. If we have an opportunity to pull this back, we certainly will. I want you to know that a lot of thought and a lot of effort went into planning how we would operate for fall semester regarding COVID. A lot of conversations among college leadership, a lot of conversations with our public health leaders as well here in El Paso County. And so this is where we've arrived. Masks required on campus. We're really encouraging people to be vaccinated. It is the best way to protect yourself, your loved ones. It's also the best way we can protect our on-campus mission and keep teaching on campus. We're also suggesting for classrooms where this makes sense, and we understand that this doesn't make sense in all classrooms, and you can exercise your own judgment about this, but where it makes sense, we want to do seating charts in our classrooms because that really helps to expedite the contact tracing if we have a positive in a classroom. So I recognize in lab classes and certain CTE programs, this just doesn't make sense, and people are up moving about a workspace throughout the day or throughout a class period. But where students are sitting in sort of basic lecture format, we are asking faculty to do seating charts. We had a big town hall about this last week, and many of you were there. If you missed that, we did record it, and it was sent out by email and is available. So we're really trying to attempt this layered approach. Don't come to campus if you're sick. Continue to make sure you're washing your hands and practicing good sanitation. We're sanitizing classrooms after each day, not after each class period now. We're encouraging vaccinations, and we're putting some financial incentives out there for faculty, staff, and students around that. And we're requiring masks on campus. I'll tell you, all of this is built around two fundamental goals that we're trying to accomplish. One is to keep our faculty, staff, and students safe, and the other is to protect our on-campus mission and continue to teach on campus. And these are a little bit like magnets where we've got the two positive poles together. They push in opposite directions. So the way we could maximize safety would be to be entirely remote. The way that we can maximize support of our students would be to have no restrictions on what we did on campus. And so neither of those is ideal. We've tried to find the best balancing point in between. I can't promise you that we have it right, that there may be adjustments throughout this semester, but we've taken our best shot at trying to determine how we can best operate this fall. And I think that this on-campus mission is really, really important. And there have been folks that have asked, and understandably so, it's a fair question. We did well last year. Students continued to attend. Students were able to be successful in their classes and move on. Why do we need to be back on campus? And the answer for me is that when I look at our enrollment last year, and we were down 11%, you'll see that in a few minutes. And when we look at who wasn't here, it was our most vulnerable students. And when we look at who didn't succeed last year, again, it was often our most vulnerable students. So we know that some of our students who are well-resourced at home, who have nice homes and good technology and good Wi-Fi at home, they're able to be successful in the remote environment pretty easily, pretty well. I think they still miss the in-person experience, and a lot of them expressed that in surveys we did of students. But the issue for us is really about accessibility, and it was our most vulnerable students from communities of color, low-income students, first-generation students who had the greatest challenges in being successful in this remote environment. And because of our access mission, it is critically important that we be on campus. And that's very much for me connected to equity and the opportunity for all students to succeed. So we are really striving to preserve that on-campus mission while also really striving to keep people safe. And so, as I said, can't promise this is all right today. COVID may change, the Delta variant may go away, or it may get much worse in our community. We really don't know what will happen, but we are prepared to make changes and to continue to adapt as needed. I am very proud of this work around new alternative work arrangements that we've done. I think it represents an opportunity for Pikes Peak Community College to really become a much more employee-friendly, modern, and flexible workplace for everybody who's part of the Pikes Peak team. I think 2 weeks ago, Kim Hennessy and I did a hour-and-a-half long town hall on new alternative work arrangements. And again, I think that was recorded and is available if you missed that. But this creates some really exciting new opportunities for how we get to work here at Pikes Peak Community College. And in particular, we have these two setups of flex time and flex place that are available to everyone as long as it makes sense for your work area. And what will be critical with flex time and flex place is that for us, it's always going to be mission first. It's always going to be around our first priority will be accountability to our students and to the work of the college. But where we can successfully accomplish our work and provide flex time or flex place, I think it's going to be a big win for us. So flex time specifically allows employees in certain areas, and again, it's area by area, but it allows employees to work perhaps, for example, 4 10-hour days and have 1 day off during the week. and so employees are able to then have different days of the week off. I can assure you everybody won't have Friday off who is on flex time, because we are fully open and operational Monday through Friday. But I'm hoping that through the course of the year, people will be able to get exactly what they want through this process, it's at least for a period of time. So for example, a department might rotate Fridays around. You might start off and your day off is Tuesday, but in a couple of months, you might rotate to where your day off is on Friday. The flex time is really targeted, I think, especially to areas where there is redundancy in positions. So just for example, with my vice presidents and executive directors who are part of my team, I've told them flex time, it just isn't going to work. We need you here every day. Decision-making processes and meetings and our work goes on every day. So we'll really need you here, and flex time probably isn't going to be an option for you. In areas like financial aid and advising, where we have a lot of folks with the same job title, I think it will be very possible for us to build flex time options for employees, so that we get 2 wins. One, we might be able to have longer hours of coverage during the day because people will be working the 10-hour. And then, of course, employees will have a day off during the week as well. Flex place refers to being able to work remotely part of the time. So we're allowing employees to work remotely up to 2 days a week. It's certainly possible that a person could combine flex time and flex place, be working 4 days a week, and 2 of those remotely and 2 of those on campus. And that's sort of the maximum flex package that someone could have. Flex place does make sense for a lot of folks. And in fact, I've told my team, although flex time I don't think works for you, flex place does. And if you want to work remotely a couple of days a week, I'm willing to work with you and we'll try to figure this out. I think the big messages about this is mission first, accomplishing our work and being accountable to our students and making sure that nothing drops because we're moving to flex time and flex place. And secondly, to be patient with this process. We're starting this on September 1st, And I'm really happy with the fact that we have arranged this in a way to have faculty, staff, classified staff, and APT staff all have these options, depending on where you work again at the college and what your work looks like. But we're not going to have this all figured out on September 1st. So although we're saying we can start this process on September 1st, I will encourage you to be patient. It's really going to be department by department figuring this out, supervisors working with their teams, then working with directors and vice presidents to make sure that we're all aligned and we have a good plan. Some folks may be able to start this in early September. Others, it may take us a few weeks to get this going, but this is the direction we're going. And again, I think it's really good for employees to create this modern and flexible workplace that will help us retain and recruit great team members here at Pikes Peak. So I want to do a special shout out on this to Kim Hennessy and the HR department. They've just done a really great job putting this together. And speaking of Kim, she's one of our numerous new leaders here at Pikes Peak this year. And I'll tell you, we've had a really stable leadership team for about the last 5 years. We haven't had any changes. And then this year we had quite a few changes, and they were all really positive and happy changes. We had Dr. Baker, who realized the long-term goal of becoming a president, and he's now over in West Virginia. We had Keith Barnes, who realized a long-term goal as well of being able to move back to Illinois and taking a big promotion as a vice president of a large community college in Illinois. And we had Carlton Brooks, who after many years of dedicated service to the college was able to retire this year. And we have some phenomenal new team members who have come in behind them. So Jackie Gators Jordan, I'm so thrilled to announce her new position last week as Vice President of Instruction, and really excited about getting to work with Jackie and the energy and experience she brings to this role. Jackie started as an adjunct instructor more than 2 decades ago at Pikes Peak, and has been promoted many times and has done a lot of different roles at Pikes Peak, and is now our Vice President of Instruction. Jim Mancall joined us back in early summer. We kind of announced his position and hiring just before we went out for graduation back in May. But Jim's position as Executive Director of Strategic Initiatives is really built around helping us complete more projects, helping us have more leadership to bring people together from different parts of the college especially. And so when I think about things Jim will be doing, he'll be working across instructional services, student services, administrative services to solve problems and to work on big projects. A couple of the things he's taking on right away is he's really helped us with our fall COVID planning, and he is also going to be heading up and leading our strategic planning efforts to update our strategic plan this fall, and I have a little bit more information about that coming up. Dr. Tico Hardy has joined us as our Chief Diversity Officer, and what she just brings a tremendous and irrepressible positive energy to our team, and I'm so excited about Tico's vision for this position and what she's going to accomplish. So welcome Dr. Hardy into this new role. And finally, I want to notice again, Kim Hennessy is our Interim Vice President for Human Resources. She's just doing a tremendous job. There is so much changing right now, and she's really bringing just tremendous stability and background HR knowledge to that. You know, as I work alongside Kim, I see someone who is kind and empathetic and firm and clear and knowledgeable about human resources all at the same time. We're so fortunate to have Kim step into this role, and I expect this will be our team for the coming year, and we will revisit the HR position sometime. That will probably be late in the spring before we'll take another look at that. But this is our new team, and it's just a tremendous new team, and I'm just very, very excited about what we're going to accomplish together. I want to affirm for you this morning that diversity, equity, and inclusion remains a core piece of what we are doing here as a college. And There was a time, I think, when we operated in a way that diversity, equity, inclusion was perhaps somewhat tangential to our central mission, our central work. And that's really different today. I think we understand DEI work today as being central and core to who we are and what we're doing. And I think the pandemic really helped us affirm the position of this work here at the college. We saw with the pandemic with our own students, and we saw this up close with a much brighter light on it, that people's experience was different depending on where they lived in the world and what their life experiences were. Communities of color were harder hit by the pandemic. And I saw that up close and personal because I was part of the Colorado Springs Recovery Council. And every week during the height of the pandemic, and we're going back to this, unfortunately, now, a group of Colorado Springs leaders was meeting with public health leadership. We were looking at our numbers. We were looking at what the city and the community could do to respond to this and to support people through it. And there was clearly a disproportionate number of Black and Brown people who were affected by COVID. And it was present both in the number of cases, and it was also present in hospitalizations. And the big reason behind this, and that we were able to uncover, and a lot of conversation went into this with public health trying to understand this, is that a lot of these folks had jobs working on the front lines, being, for example, a cashier at a grocery store. And so their jobs were often much more connected to direct interaction with the public. And they also often lived in multi-generational homes. And so if one person in the home was working in a job or a position where they had direct contact with the public on a daily basis, often that person was at very high risk for contracting COVID. Then they went home to multi-generational homes where children, parents, grandparents were all living in a home together. And vulnerable people within those homes also caught COVID and often ended up being those who were hospitalized. And so we did see this disproportionate impact on low-income people in our community, on communities of color in Colorado Springs. And we also saw this with our enrollment at Pikes Peak and the success of our students at Pikes Peak. So we are redoubling today our commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion work. And it's critically important to us in what we do. I want to share a couple of things with you about this. One of the things I wanted to share is that myself and the entire leadership team this past year, we took on the project of enrolling and registering for classes as students at Pikes Peak this year. So your whole leadership team went through the enrollment and registration process. Not a single one of us successfully completed that process without getting help. And so if the college's senior leadership cannot get through the enrollment process without getting help, imagine the challenge of a 30-year-old single mom who's working full-time, trying to register and become a student at Pikes Peak. It's not easy. It is a challenging process to get through our registration and enrollment processes. And so people who go through that process, that they've got some commitment to us. And so one of the things I wanted to ask this morning is, if you have students in your class, and you will this fall, that you're frustrated with, who are arriving on our campus and in our classes without a good understanding of what's required for college level work, and without a good understanding of what they need to do to be successful, do remember, as you're counseling that person and encouraging them and helping them get the help they need on campus, recall that they've got through this registration process that is difficult and challenging, and they persevered with that process for a reason. And that reason is that they have some dream that they brought with them that helped them get through that, and that has brought them to our campus. Every student that comes onto our campus or enrolls in a class, online, remote, on campus, doesn't matter, they're entrusting us with an enormous investment of their time. They're entrusting us with an investment of their money, and they're entrusting us with their dreams. And I think that's so critical to remember. It's connected to this equity work because our equity commitment means that we want to be sure every student who comes to us can be successful, that there is equity in the success of our students, and students who bring us their dreams and entrust that to us. We have a responsibility back to them to help them be successful. This past year, I shared an article out from a big accounting and financial consulting firm called Deloitte. And many of you read that article. And I think I held 4 town halls where we got together in groups of about 25 or 30. And we had great conversations about that article. It was called The Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Revolution. One of the key findings, profound findings of this article, is that companies and organizations who embrace diversity are more successful than those who don't. So I thought a lot about that since sending that article out. And one of the things I would tell you is Deloitte is a very expensive company to hire. They're, again, an accounting and financial consultancy firm based out of London, England, but they're an international organization. And people hire Deloitte to become more profitable and more successful as companies, not just feel good. And in their findings, that investment in diversity, equity, and inclusion helped companies be more successful and helped organizations be more successful is really relevant for us. One of the things I really liked about this article was the focus on inclusion. I think that the inclusion part of this, if I had to pick one of those 3 letters, diversity, the D, the E, or the I, and I don't have to pick, but if I did have to pick just one of those, I would pick inclusion, because I think people's experience of feeling included and valued on campus is so critically important to their success here. And I want to share a story with you. It's a little bit hokey, does not have significant consequences, but I want to share my story about inclusion with you, because I hope that in sharing this, you might think of a time when you did not feel a sense of inclusion and how that impacted you. So my story of little consequence is that when I was a middle school or a teenager, 13, 14, 15, I went to a rural high school system in South Georgia. We didn't have a lot of resources, so PE every day pretty well consisted of, depending on the weather, all the boys in the class, we either went and played basketball together or we went and played football together. And again, it was a small class. There was only maybe 12 of us, something like that, maybe 12 or 13 boys. And every day we would go to play this game, go to PE and go to play football or basketball, depending on the weather. And 2 of the larger, more dominant boys would always be chosen as captains, and they would pick teams. And the process was you picked the best players, and every single day for a couple of years at least, we would go through this process of picking teams, and I would be picked last. And the picking process would end with, well, I guess we'll take Bolton. And that was probably about as kind as it was ever said, but sometimes it was said much less kindly than that. And probably a lot of you, if you those of you who know me and you've seen me around, I'm 5'7" and 140 pounds today. That makes me 20 pounds heavier than I was at that time when I was in high school. So I was a little guy, I wasn't very good. And the impact of being picked last day after day was that I did not feel included in the team sports and in that process. And one of the things that I thought about the impact of that for me was that when we would play these games, I would hide it within the game. And so, for example, if we were playing basketball, nobody from the other team bothered to cover me because they weren't going to throw the ball to me anyway. And I made sure of that by making sure that I kind of stood behind other people and that I hid. And because I didn't feel wanted on the team and because I didn't feel included on the team, although I didn't have a lot of athletic ability, what little ability I had, I didn't make any effort to play with that ability or to help my team. And that is really relevant to our college. So if people don't feel included here, they may hide here. They don't want to take initiative. They won't stand up and talk about an issue. They won't take leadership on a project that they have great inside knowledge about because they don't feel included. They don't feel valued. They don't feel wanted here. I don't want that to happen to anybody. And I'll tell you, all those years that I got picked last for the sports team day after day, I dreaded going to PE every day and going through that same painful process yet again. I don't want anybody to dread coming to work at Pikes Peak Community College. I want people to come here to be excited about coming to work here. And I want them to know that they're valued, their authentic, true life experience, and whatever they've experienced in life, that they have important things to offer to our college, to our students, to solving problems here. And all of that comes from simply feeling included, the empowerment that comes from feeling included and wanted and valued. So that's my goal for every person who walks through our doors or is part of our team in any way, whether they're students or employees. And by the way, please don't feel sorry for me about the sports thing. I did eventually figure it out and found cross country and then bicycle racing, and I have boxes full of medals for that. So turns out there are sports that are good for short, skinny guys, and I eventually found those. One of the shining examples of our diversity, equity, inclusion work and how it can impact our students, and I mean all students by this, is the work with the Equity Project. And so I had faculty members last year who basically from a blank piece of paper built the Equity Project. Karen Summerson and Dr. Tico Hardy did a phenomenal job of this incredibly hard work of starting at zero and building an incredibly powerful project. And the Equity Project in their hands became a data-based process of analyzing for individual faculty members who wanted to participate their historical pass rates for demographically disaggregated students. And so a faculty member could look back, for example, over the last 5 years and see what were their pass rates for based on gender, based on race, and whether there were disparities there between groups. And it wasn't always what people expected. There were, well, for example, one faculty member early on shared with me that they had a deficit in pass rates for white males, which was certainly not expected. But the Equity Project allows faculty to look at their demographically disaggregated data for pass rates and to come together as a group to really talk about specific and useful solutions that can be applied in the classroom. And one of the very early learnings from the Equity Project is that building better connections and more engagement with students in the classroom, that what we're learning from that doesn't just apply to underrepresented students, but it actually applies to all students. And I had the privilege last spring to hear from faculty members firsthand who have been through the Equity Project. And I saw some of their writing and what they shared about their experience. I got to be in a Zoom meeting with them where they talked a little bit about their experience. And what I heard was just phenomenal personal and professional growth that they experienced together. So back in early spring, I sent out a call to the college asking faculty about joining the Equity Project this fall. We have a full team of folks who have signed up to do that again. We're providing some stipends for those faculty members for the extra time involved. And I think they will also have just an incredible experience. We have a really wonderful group of team members who are helping to support them. And so Dr. Hardy is once again working with that group, as well as Dr. Amanda Joy Mingo, Sharon Bjorkman, and Gloria Nikolai. We're going to have a phenomenal leadership team with this. And my hope that as more and more people go through the Equity Project, that more people can also become leaders of these projects, and that more faculty and eventually all faculty can have this incredibly powerful experience. And so I just want to say a big thank you to the creators of the Equity Project for what you accomplished. I also want to say that I think what we're learning with the Equity Project can be applied to lots of other areas. Wherever you work at the college, I'd encourage you to think about and consider whether there's a way for you to collect data about how students are doing and connecting with the area that you're responsible for. And could we analyze that data and look at it for the possibility that there are systemic issues that some group of students for some reason is less well served by that group, and how we might address that. And so we're really hoping to take what we've learned from the Equity Project and apply it across the college in a whole lot of different areas, using this data-based approach to how we're supporting our students. So in the coming year, things that I'm hopeful for, again, is looking at what we've done with the Equity Project, applying it elsewhere, facilitating really data-driven processes to understand how our students are doing and where there are deficits and how we might address those. I think Dr. Hardy and I will be doing at least 2 town halls this fall. And we're talking about putting together a book club or maybe multiple book clubs that allow people to kind of come in wherever you are on your journey with DEI and be a part of really meaningful conversations. So some of the relevant reading that we're considering are The Conversation from Equity Talk to Equity Walk, What Inclusive Instructors Do, Beyond Inclusion, Reimagining the Future of Work, Workers in the Workplace, and the New Jim Crow. Those are all books that we're considering right now. We're also open certainly to your suggestions. Over the weekend, I just started reading the book Caste, which is a really powerful book that also helps us understand our society and sort of how our dominant caste is advantaged in our society. I think a really compelling read that's got me thinking hard about what I could learn from this and bring to the workplace as well. So I encourage you to become a part of this. And so if you'd like to join these efforts, and it's really important and that we have a larger group of people, and we've had great groups of people, but I'm always looking to expand the tent and find ways to do that. And as I say that, I want to remind you that going back to the conversation about inclusion, when I talk about inclusion at Pikes Peak, I think there are folks at our college possibly who think that when I talk about inclusion, I'm talking about people of color, and I am. And I'm also talking about our majority population, our white population. And I'm talking about conservative people, and I'm talking about liberal people. And I'm talking about all of us when I talk about inclusion. And I'm really looking for people to join. And often over the years, I've had young people, young professionals that I've had the privilege of getting to mentor and support. And one of the things that I always talk to them about is being a joiner. And years ago, when I worked at DuPont, I had the opportunity to go to the University of Chicago for a short professional development course taught by a man who had won the Nobel Prize for economics. And his Nobel Prize was based on his work of being able to predict who would be the most successful professionally in different environments. And over again, he found two consistent things that the most successful workers did. Number one, they were joiners. They joined groups, they got involved, they were connected. And that is number two, they were connected. So the two things that predicted success was that people joined and that they had wide networks of connections. They weren't just connected within their little department within an organization, but they were connected across the organization with a large number of people who had all sorts of different roles. And so if you would like hints about how to be really successful in the world, be a joiner and be a connector. And so there will be opportunities to join this fall. And I really encourage you to participate. I don't know exactly how we'll do these book clubs, but if we have large numbers of people, maybe we get together and we do breakout groups. But I think both Dr. Hardy and myself will try to lead at least one of these groups. There will be courageous conversations. Be willing to come and be involved. Be willing to be a little bit uncomfortable. Be willing to come and challenge your own beliefs and think about, why do I believe this, and is what I believe actually correct? And so really look forward to your participation in what we're going to have coming in programming this fall. We have a lot coming this fall as well. And so one of the things that will certainly be core to our strategic planning is our DEI work. It's hard for me to imagine today, but back in 2017, we completed a 5-year strategic plan, and that plan has expired. And so we're at the end of that plan. I think the first thing we'll do around updating our strategic plan is we're going to give a honest, sober, transparent report about how we did with Vision 2022. So as we approach 2022, that strategic plan, we really want to take a hard look at what we accomplished and what we succeeded with and what we didn't. I expect that will come out to the whole college as an email report, likely followed up by one of the town halls that I'm really have gotten attached to doing. So I really like this process of sending out information by email and then having a follow-up town hall to answer questions and to talk about it. I think we did a lot of good with that strategic plan. And I think in the last 18 months, since COVID hit, the process that we used to address that strategic plan, which was our focus goal process, kind of fell by the wayside with COVID. And we just really put all of our energy into getting through COVID and figuring things out. I'm really eager to bring back the focus goal process and to get us going on that again. I think it really helped us move the needle as a college. So as I look forward to our strategic planning, as I mentioned earlier, Jim Mancall will be our point person for organizing this work and helping us think through how to do this. I'm really looking for a transparent and inclusive process that brings the voice of employees together, students, as well as people from out in our community together as well. One of the things that I really hope for with our strategic plan this year and the work that we'll be doing, and I think we'll be releasing the strategic plan sometime during the spring of 2022, is that we really focus in on what is most important to the college, that we can identify a few big things that we're going to go after. I think where strategic planning, both for Pikes Peak Community College as well as other entities, often goes astray, is that we want to make everyone happy, and we do want to make everyone happy. But often in trying to do that, we put out strategic plans that say, we will be all things to all people for all time. And that's just not possible. And often it ends up with a very diffused efforts around what the strategic plan calls for us to do. So I'm hoping that we end up building a strategic plan that is really focused and really helps us with allocation of resources and effort so we can really make a big difference in whatever we believe are the most critical issues for our college looking forward. One of the things that I felt was really important to highlight and wanted to talk to the college about are new instructional modes. And so this modality of instruction, which just means, the way that we deliver classes and instruction to people, we've learned a lot again. And this has really been a theme for me recently and through this presentation. We've learned a lot because of COVID, and it's really accelerated our use of technology and what we're capable of doing. So, for many years we had in-person, and then we had online, and then we had hybrid classes that mixed together online and in person. And we've now added to that very powerful instruction through remote live instruction. And I think a lot of students during COVID really benefited from and thrived with remote live. And so we have classes this fall that will continue to be remote live. And then we also added HighFlex. And HighFlex is a powerful technology that allows a classroom to have people who are live in person and online simultaneously. I've run a lot of HighFlex meetings over the last 6 months or so, and I'll acknowledge it's a challenging environment to have people live in person with me as well as online. Often I find that my attention gets primarily focused on the people who are live with me, and I need to be nudged to return to and make sure I pay attention to those who are online as well. But what I really love about HighFlex is the capability that it gives us to manage through COVID and perhaps additional challenges that might be out there that we haven't even anticipated yet. But we're 18 months into COVID, and I don't know when this will end. I don't know if it'll be a year or 2 years. We just really don't know where we'll be with this. And so this capability of dealing with it is really going to be important. So we now have 60 classrooms that are outfitted to be HighFlex classrooms. And we have a long-term goal of getting all of our classrooms outfitted with HighFlex technology. And we're kind of balancing that simultaneously with acquiring laptops and making sure that people can work remotely simultaneously. But what's really going to be important about HighFlex classrooms this fall is that if you can imagine a history class with 25 students in it, and we get a COVID positive in that classroom, and the instructor has done a great job and they've kept a seating chart, and we take a look, and there are 8 people who would be considered to be in close contact with the person who tested positive. And all of this will also depend somewhat on vaccination status. But let's say 8 students have to be off campus for a period of time to make sure that we don't have additional COVID spread on campus. Those 8 students can immediately transition to participating in the class online in a HighFlex classroom. And they can stay current with the class, and they can continue to be successful in the class. Because otherwise, that's a real challenge for those students, as well as the instructor, to take care of, for example, 8 students who can no longer attend in person. But if they can attend live remote through a HighFlex classroom, they can remain current with the class. And so I expect we're going to be dealing with a lot of these kinds of challenges in the coming fall semester. And this investment in HighFlex classrooms is really going to help us manage through this well. I just want to mention really quickly for those who may not have heard or are new to Pikes Peak, what has long been CCC Online and PPCC Online are both going away probably in the next 18 months or so. And what's taking their place is Colorado Online. So there will be this single entity, Colorado Online. And the challenge around building Colorado Online, the reason for these changes is, number one, we had a big accreditation issue. We did not have faculty who were at institutions who had HLC, Higher Learning Commission accreditation, overseeing CCC Online. And so this gave our accreditors a lot of heartburn because we didn't have the right kind of faculty oversight. We also see Colorado Online as being a significant opportunity to grow online enrollment. And one of the challenges that CCC Online has had is that there are very few start to finish programs that people can do there. So there are a lot of classes people can take on CCC Online, but they aren't built out well to help people actually earn degrees. And so our Chancellor, Chancellor Joe Garcia, is really committed to an online structure that helps far more people participate in online instruction and really builds programs that people can fully complete online through this process. There are still many, many questions about how Colorado Online is going to work. Who's going to be in charge of areas? How will the classes be distributed? How will the money be distributed? You know, who will hire the faculty to teach there? All of these things are to be determined, but I will say the wheels are turning on this. I think we're figuring out, we're solving it. Pikes Peak Community College is well represented in the process. I'm part of the executive steering committee. I know Cyril Perrin is part of one of the key committees. Deidre Schoolcraft is. I think there are others, but we are very well represented in the process, and it's going to be a big change. I will suggest it'll be quite a big change, but it's going to be a really important change for us. And we will work through it. We'll get there, and I will keep you updated, especially as some of these key decisions get made. We have a new website launching for Pikes Peak. So our current website has been in place for quite a few years. And it is due for an update for a whole lot of reasons, including the fact that the platform it's built on is no longer being supported by the company that put that out. So we really had to make some changes. I'm loving the more colorful appearance of it. I will tell you that a lot of work has gone into this. I want to do a shout out especially to Matt Radcliffe, who has been meeting with faculty, staff, and students for over a year now, collecting input about what people believe is important in the website. The website will continue to have a primary focus on prospective students, and I think that's really critical. When people are thinking about going to college, the first place they're going to turn is to our website, and they're going to look and see, does this college have what I'm looking for? Do I feel comfortable with what they're doing? Do they make it easy to get information? And so that's going to be a really important part of the process. So I think things that will be emphasized will be academic pathways, program offerings and career options, self-assessment tools. And if you've tried to use the calendar on our website, of course, we're going to have a big improvement with that. The pathways are really important, and I want to highlight these because they're really going to change, I think, a lot of how we talk to prospective students about attending Pikes Peak. So at this point, Matt and teams that are working with him from instructional services have built 6 program pathway areas. They're science, technology, engineering, and math, public service and social sciences, medical sciences, business design and hospitality, arts and humanities, and applied technology. And applied technology has things like CAD, 3D printing, robotics, electronics, mechatronics, welding. Those are the types of programs in that area. This is really an important process and an important improvement for students who look at Pikes Peak and see this enormous number of program offerings that we have. But it can be very difficult for a prospective student to sort through that and figure out what might be the right program for them. And we know that when students have a clear goal in mind for why they're attending college, they're much more likely to be successful. So we're hoping that these pathway processes, and we believe these pathway processes, will help students evaluate what their options are and make good decisions. And when we can combine these with self-assessments that allow students to look at what their own strengths are and what they might most enjoy doing, I think we can really help students with making good choices about what their options are for future careers. Switching gears to give you some of the kind of basic information I always include in our PDW every year. This past year, you'll notice we were down 11% in our enrollment. And again, what was most troubling about that 11% is that we know we lost a lot of our most vulnerable students who chose just simply not to attend. This morning, I believe our numbers suggested that we were down about 14% year over year, but I do want to tell you that's going to get better. So we are starting classes a week later than we started last year. So we tend to have a lot of enrollment in the last week before classes. To me, that's a bit unfortunate because a lot of our folks who enroll very late in the process are often some of our most vulnerable students as well and don't have a great idea how the college process works. Alberto Taxera and Patricia Diawara, two of our really great numbers gurus, have been looking at our enrollment, trying to help us think about where we might land. I expect we're going to end up being down for fall semester around 5%, perhaps a little bit better than that, but we will not be down the 13 or 14% you see this morning. I think over the course of this week, that will tighten up and we'll end up down 3 to 5%. And I do want you to know, if you're really concerned about this, if this is creating a lot of anxiety for you, the college is really fine in terms of our finances and where we are. One of the things that happened last year with this 11% enrollment decline is we had a lot more students who are registering for online classes, which have a higher tuition point. And so although we lost a lot of enrollment, to lose double-digit enrollment is a lot, we didn't lose a lot of revenue because of the different mix of classes that students took. And we also, of course, ended up getting a lot of financial support from the federal government. So while I want everyone to be concerned about enrollment, and every one of us has some role in helping the college be successful with enrolling students. So I want everyone to be concerned, but I don't want anybody to be panicked or feeling undue anxiety about this. The retention. Well, after 8 years of improving our annual fall-to-fall retention, this was the first year since 2012 that we did not make an increase in our fall-to-fall retention. However, we did succeed mightily, I would say, by completing fall 2020 with a 55% fall-to-fall retention rate last year. And so I think this was a remarkable success for our college. I can remember back in 2011, 2012, but especially 2011, it was my first year at Pikes Peak. And when I got here, a strategic planning process was already underway. And we talked about a goal for retention rate. And that conversation turned around, what's the retention rate of the very best urban community colleges in the nation? Colleges that look like ours, who's the best and what are their retention rates? And we settled on a goal, ironically, of 55%. And for quite a few years, we worked really hard at hitting that 55% number. And when we were at 47.3, that seemed like a very long ways off and a very, very hard thing to accomplish. So in the midst of COVID, we were still able to hit 55% enrollment. 55% retention rate fall to fall. It's just a remarkable success and really a testament to the incredible people who are part of the Pikes Peak Community College team. Our academic coaches, I think, had an enormous impact here. Our advisors and our financial aid folks who help students get into the right programs and into the right courses and classes that they could be successful. Our foundation that raised so much money to help students with the financial burden of attending college. And of course, our faculty, where the rubber meets the road in the classroom and the engagement that faculty created. And I want to call out and notice especially our HIPS team and Joellen Becko and Robin Schofield and the work that they did over the last years to really build engagement in the classroom, because I think that is the most critical. But all of these components have come together over the years to help us build this kind of increase in retention and to help us maintain that even through COVID. So Huge kudos to all of our Pikes Peak teams and just a tremendous job of maintaining that level of retention in spite of COVID. Graduation was like none other this year, and just a tremendous success as well. So we did see a dip in graduate numbers, and that is not surprising given that we saw the dip in enrollment. So down about 11% in enrollment, and we're down less than 10% in graduate numbers, but we were down. You can see we hit a high water mark back in 1819. Before we got hit with COVID, for the first time in the history of the college, we awarded more than 4,000 degrees and certificates. This year, we were at 3,562. Some students earn more than one degree and certificate, so the number of graduates this year was 2,783. And imagine and think about that impact of our college producing and helping put out into our community 2,783 people with new degrees and certificates who become part of our workforce and help our community be successful. We are a true game changer in our community. And so really proud of that accomplishment and really proud of what we did there. Also really proud of the graduation, and kudos to Kerrigan Edelman for her good work on this. She put an enormous amount of time into planning a graduation unlike any that the college had ever held in our history. We did a drive-through graduation in the parking lot here at Centennial Campus, and I think the graduation proceedings started at 9 a.m. and went through about 4 p.m. in the afternoon, and it was exceptionally smooth sailing and exceptionally well planned and gratifying in a way that graduation maybe has never been before. I loved getting to see up close and personal the friends and family who were accompanying each graduate, instead of having maybe 5 or 6 seconds on stage with each graduate. The graduates that I had a chance to connect with, I had maybe 2 minutes with each of them and really got to hear a little bit about their story and their struggles to get to graduation and what they plan to do next. It was really, really a beautiful day, and felt so good to celebrate with fellow faculty and staff members and the graduates themselves. We got a lot of help this year. As you all know, I've talked about it multiple times, but I want to reintroduce a term that I use a lot. It's the term HERF, which is an acronym for Higher Education Emergency Relief Funds. So our HERF funding over the last year came from the CARES Act, the CRISA Act, and the ARP Act. All of those were congressional bills that passed through, and the first two were signed by President Trump. The last one was signed by President Biden. They all put money out into things like the Paycheck Protection programs and all sorts of different programs, but they all put money into higher ed to help colleges and universities across the nation remain stable and serve students well. So what we've done with our HERF funds is we've put a lot of that money out directly to students. So for example, new students, all students attending college this fall are receiving $500 or already have received $500 just before school started to help with the cost of books and technology and Wi-Fi as they need. We also made a really powerful statement to our students by committing to pay for our students' books this year. And we're one of maybe just a handful of colleges in the whole nation that have decided to use our money this way. But we felt that this was a way that we could impact students the most. And when we looked at the barriers students have to being successful, we know a lot of students don't get their financial aid money or their VA money in time to buy books. We know that purchasing books is really a burden for many of our students. And even though we're moving a lot of our work to open educational resources and to free materials, there's still, we expect this book benefit to students to be something to the tune of about $6 million this year. We've also hired more advisors, more enrollment specialists, and more coaches to help our students be successful. We have covered or forgiven student debt. We actually paid that off with some of the HERF money that we received. It was one of the recommended uses of the HERF money from the U.S. Department of Education. So it helped students and people who maybe stopped out of college. They might be able to come back because we've paid off their student debt. And it helped the college because we didn't have to write off that debt as bad debt. We actually put $3 million of revenue for the college to pay off that debt. So I think we've done a lot of really positive things with the HERF funds. A lot of hard work has gone into trying to think about how we could use that money and those resources strategically to positively impact students in our college and help more people be successful through the pandemic. And I think that is working. I think we've done a good job of it. And we will continue to manage this, to really look at the strategic use of those funds and make sure that we're really putting them to highest and best use. One of the things that has occurred over the last 6 months to a year is that we've been working on making changes to our bookstore, and those are now in place. So Pikes Peak Community College was the last college in the community college system to operate an independent bookstore. I think without the incredibly capable leadership of Laurel Davies, we would have made this choice many years ago, but she's helped us really maintain an independent bookstore far longer than any other college in our system could find viable to do so. And we've now made a partnership with Barnes & Noble. Barnes & Noble will be running our bookstore on campus. They'll be fulfilling book orders for students and working with faculty. We expect this really to be invisible to faculty and students, that the processes will remain the same, pricing will not go up. And also want to make it very clear, make sure people know no one lost their job through this process. There were no layoffs. We have a couple of people who have moved to Barnes & Noble for employment. We have other people that are moving to different jobs on campus. But a top priority for me going through this changes at the bookstore process was that we took care of the people that are our long-term employees at the bookstore. Well, I feel like this is a story pretty much every fall that we award a record number of scholarships to our students. And yet again, in the midst of the pandemic, our PPCC Foundation has had a record-setting year, putting out $1.7 million of scholarships to our students. And really notable for me about the scholarships is that they have scholarship recipients at Pikes Peak have over a 90% successful completion rate. And that contrasts with quite a bit lower, of course, for our regular population, those who are not receiving scholarships. And I think it's twofold impact that the foundation has. One, of course, the money helps, and students may have to work less. They have more flexibility because they're receiving scholarships to be able to focus more on their classes and their studies. And I think second, and equally important, is this vote of confidence that students receive when they get a scholarship. And I know we had planned this morning, but we didn't get to do it, to have a couple of students talking about their experience of receiving the faculty scholarships and how meaningful it is. I think many of you have participated in this and heard students talking about this at the beginning of fall semester and past years. There have been certainly some of those student testimonials about the faculty scholarships where there's literally not a dry eye in the theater because of hearing their stories and the impact that we've been able to have collectively on their success. And I hear this theme over and over again from our students, the power of having someone believe in them. And in that sense that maybe nobody has ever invested in them or believed in them the way that they have when they receive a scholarship from Pikes Peak. I think that is really powerful and it's really impactful. And so if you've supported faculty scholarships in the past, thank you. If you've supported our scholarship fundraising in any way, thank you. You make a difference and it's incredibly impactful to our students. A couple of updates from our foundation, 2 big grants that we are anticipating to receive. The first one is called Back to Work, and it's $850,000 in the grant, and we're also supplementing that $850,000 with another $900,000 of HERF funding from the ARP funding we received. And this is really focused on students whose household, either they or somebody in their immediate household, had lost because of COVID. So lost work or reduced hours or lost their business. And it's really focused on helping students upskill and get back into the workforce successfully. And then Finish What You Start is an enormous grant heading our way. Hopefully it's not all signed and I's dotted and T's crossed, but we're confident we will receive this funding. $7.7 million for a 4-year program to help students who have stopped out return to college and be successful. And so we can look back at our records, and we have thousands of students who have been enrolled at Pikes Peak, but life got complicated and they stopped out. This funding is designed to help them return to college successfully. So I think it's going to be really impactful to our college community and to the larger community in Colorado Springs. And I'm really excited about what we're going to accomplish together, especially for these stop out students. Upcoming programs, new programs at Pikes Peak include a new Associate of Engineering and Science degree that is connected directly to the mechanical engineering program at UCCS. We have some really great collaboration going on between UCCS and Pikes Peak, and this is yet another example of that, and kudos to the team members involved there. A new Bachelor of Science and a new Bachelor of Applied Science in Interior Design, targeted for fall of 2022, and an Associate of Applied Science in Physical Therapy, also targeted to fall of 2022. Additional new programs, this will be a new word for a lot of us learning, mechatronics and maintenance technology. So mechatronics is bringing together a lot of different disciplines, for example, robotics and electronics and controls and construction, to build a program that is really much in demand for a lot of manufacturers and people, employers in our community. And so very excited about seeing the mechatronics program coming online. Soft launch in the spring of 2022. Hopefully all of our state financial aid pieces in place for full launch by the following fall. And also electrical pathways and electronics pathways that are part of that program as well. And an Associate of Applied Science in Health, Wellness, and Fitness. So pretty large demand out there these days for personal trainers and fitness trainers. And so we're starting up a program to support that need in our community as well. I've talked about the Empathy Project a couple of times at past PDWs, but we've made a lot of progress on it since you last got an update. The Empathy Project is putting into place the use of virtual reality technology to help learners and people engaged with it to experience what it might be like to be in a different person's shoes. And so the first Empathy Project production focuses on a person of color pulled over late at night and having an interaction with police officers. We're already using that production in our Law Enforcement Academy classes. We've had conversations with the Attorney General's office about using this training tool with police departments around the state. So this is still in progress. We're also now building a second empathy project that is focused on a person with mental disabilities. So their interaction with police officers as well, and documenting that and giving, again, the chance to really feel and experience this in a very powerful way through virtual reality technology. Sound, sight, everything is controlled by the technology, and it creates an immersive experience that's very powerful. I would say that the first empathy project piece that is out, it's upsetting to sit through this, but it's upsetting and creates discomfort in a way that really helps us challenge ourselves around, are we doing enough with how we train police officers and how we help them with de-escalation, how we help them imagine the world from another person's point of view. And that this is part of a much larger effort that's going on system-wide. So Chancellor Garcia is very engaged on a system level with a review of our Law Enforcement Academy Law Enforcement Academy curriculum, and working with the Attorney General's office and POST. And POST is the Police Officer Standards organization that determines what kind of training a police officer should have. And so there is locally, we have going on the empathy project, but statewide, system-wide, we have a big effort going on around really reviewing that curriculum and making sure that it is culturally responsive to all people in Colorado, and really focusing a lot more attention and effort, I think, on de-escalation techniques. Always, as part of PDW, I like to report on where we are with our finances and our reserves. And so if you take a look at this, you can see that over the last year, from FY20, when we were at $31 million of reserves, today we're at $41 million of reserves. So if you think back to the part of this conversation around enrollment, and I said you need not feel anxious and don't feel panicked or anxiety about the enrollment. Enrollment is important, but we're okay. Financially, we're in a good place. We increased our reserves by about $10 million this year, and there were multiple reasons for that. One, again, is that we have more students taking online classes, so that's a higher tuition point than our in-person classes. So even though we were down in enrollment, people were paying more to attend. Also, part of this was the HERF funding that we received, and some of that, for example, the paying off the bad debt, helped Pikes Peak's bottom line and allowed us to add to our reserves. And finally, we just put a hard stop on all of our capital projects at the beginning of the COVID pandemic because we didn't know what was going to happen. And my commitment to the college was to protect people in their jobs and make sure that we could meet payroll, to make sure that we didn't have any layoffs or anyone that was financially hurt by that. And so we stopped those capital projects, but it turned out that financially we were okay. So we did add a lot to our college reserves this past year. And we're now expending those. So we have a lot of capital projects that are now back in motion and happening. I'm not going to talk about all of these, but I did want to just highlight a few. The walkway repairs, which have been pretty disruptive to the courtyard and all classrooms and offices that are along the courtyard. Those are going to be finishing up here in about a month, and really needed improvement, big safety improvements, as those walkways were in pretty rough shape. The restroom upgrades for Aspen building, so right off the rotunda and then farther west. Unfortunately, those have been delayed till probably sometime in October, and we'd really hope to have those restroom upgrades completed by the time school started. However, our contractor company doing this work, they ran into delays, as so many have around construction work these days. So some of the delays had to do with getting inspectors out. Some of the delays have had to do with the company just not being able to have the crews and teams and skilled team members on site as needed. But we do think that those will wrap up in October. And I apologize today for the disruption those cause, both in terms of access to restrooms and the noise and dust affiliated with those. I want to mention the dental remodel at Rampart Range campus, that we're going to do some significant upgrades of the dental training areas, as well as phase 2 of CHES going on at CHES and Rampart Range campus. We'll finally this year be able to complete that build out. So you might recall that we remodeled about half of the CHES campus, our medical campus that's just north of Rampart Range campus. We remodeled about half of that 2 years ago. Then COVID, we were literally just weeks away from starting phase 2 when COVID hit. We put the brakes on it because we wanted to make sure we saved our money, took care of our people. We're now kind of through that process and confident that we can restart this. So we will finish the medical campus here over the coming year. And finally, I just want to mention the last line here, the First Responder Emergency Education Complex. This past week, we were scheduled to have the Capital Development Committee from the legislature visit Pikes Peak Community College campus to talk about this project. That's a very good sign for the project. It's not a promise we're going to get funded, but it's a very good sign when the Capital Development Committee visits. Unfortunately, they canceled the visit at the last minute because of COVID concerns. However, I'm still optimistic that we may be able to get this into the funding in the coming year. So this is a big upgrade to what is now the shooting range complex, but it would include new facilities for fire science, for law enforcement academy, for criminal justice, as well as for EMTs. It's a beautiful facility and plan. And I believe, if I recall right, it's about a $30 million project. And we're really hoping we might get this funded in the coming year. Pikes Peak continues to really be engaged in a lot of partnerships in our community. And I'll highlight a couple of these, but there are many more examples that I think that are not part of this. And if you're involved in a partnership, you want to chime that in the chat while I'm talking about some of our partnerships, please feel free to do that. It's hard, it can be difficult to think of them all because we're so involved in so many aspects of our community. But some of the things that we are involved in of course, has been the Quad partnership. We have a new director who will be soon announced, our longtime director, who did just a phenomenal job, Jake Eichengreen. Jake took off for graduate school at the University of Virginia about 2 weeks ago. And so we have his replacement will be announced imminently. I think it's been determined. We just haven't made it public yet. Some of the recent projects that the Quad has taken on, a really important project working with the city and especially our Colorado Springs Police Department around exploring trust in our communities, especially our communities of color, finding new viable business options for Venatucci Farms, expanding opportunities for Silver Key, are just three of many, many projects which have run through the Quad recently. I know the Quad is recruiting students now for fall semester projects. Remember, these are extraordinary learning opportunities where our students work alongside students from UCCS, Colorado College, United States Air Force Academy. Our students absolutely shine in this environment. Year after year, I see this and hear it from people of how brilliant our students are. And I think it's often because they bring so much more real life experience. But we are recruiting now. These are extraordinary learning opportunities for our students, and students get paid for working with the Quad. So please help us publicize this to your students because they are just extraordinary opportunities. This past year, we really ramped up our collaboration with Concrete Couch on their Concrete Coyote project. Concrete Coyote is a few acres of what was sort of basically I would describe as previously industrial wasteland along the east edge of downtown and railroad tracks. And they've taken this land over and just made this magical park out of it. And our construction students, as well as art students, have been integrally involved in this and have helped to make this quite extraordinary. So many thank yous to our construction program and arts programs who have helped to build this really fantastic collaboration that has reshaped this industrial wasteland into this really magical space on the east part of Colorado Springs and is serving the hillside and other communities as a playground and a gateway to the arts. That I just love that vision of what they've accomplished. Other key partnerships for us that are Care and Share partnership is ongoing. Care and Share now for years has been supplying Pikes Peak Community College with food for food drives where we've given away literally hundreds of tons of food. They're also providing food for the community table, and the community table continues to be a very important part of how we serve our students. If people are hungry or their families are hungry, it's really hard to think much about college and classes and homework where people are hungry. And so we're helping to address hunger in our community through the community table, and we have access to food at all 3 of our campuses. So if you know students who have need, please make sure that they know that this is available. We have just recently are completing a partnership with Colorado Public Radio. They're going to be coming in and helping us operate KPCC. And one of the really important parts of this, I think from my point of view, is that there's going to be really wonderful paid internships for Pikes Peak Community College students at Colorado Public Radio. So very, very strong partnership forging there. And finally, I want to say the Youth Documentary Academy has been just also a terrific partner. They taught programs at our downtown studio campus over the summer, and we're looking at ways to really further this partnership and the possibility of some sort of film school or a film academy here in Colorado Springs. There is programming like that available in Denver, but as Colorado Springs gets bigger and bigger, I think we can accommodate programs like perhaps a film school here in our region as well. A few shout outs and kudos. As often has happened in the past, Pikes Peak was designated a military-friendly school with a bronze designation. I do want to mention here that we are in the process of hiring a prior learning assessment professional to really devote full time to the effort of making sure that military students get every possible hour of credit that they've earned from the training they receive in the military. Really helps when military students can come into college several rungs up the ladder, having credit, college credit for the training they receive, builds their confidence, and of course it saves them time and money. We were nationally ranked as Best for Vets School by Military Times. We took silver in the Colorado Springs Business Journal Best of Business for Education and Career category. And we placed 32nd in the state. No, we placed 32nd nationally. I'm sorry, that should say nationally. In the National Cyber League's Power Ranking. 32nd might not sound that exciting to you until you realize that more than 10,000 students from more than 300 colleges and universities participated in this competition. And out of those more than 300 colleges and universities, our incredible cyber program finished 32nd. Huge kudos to Terry and the whole cyber program. You all are just doing phenomenal work. And lastly, boy, our PTK program, so many kudos. They needed their own slide here. They received awards at the Colorado-Wyoming Regional Conference, including the 5-Star Chapter Award, Distinguished Chapter Advisor Award to Glenn Rolfing and Agla Jackson. college project placed 7th. Our Honors in Action program finished 2nd. In the Distinguished Chapter Officer Awards, first place went to Ariana Bustos from Pikes Peak Community College. And other things we're involved in, zookeeping has been involved with Colorado Parks and Wildlife, building bluebird nests. A big shout out to JC Allen, who was selected out of 900 applicants as a 2021 very prestigious Coca-Cola Leaders Promise Scholar through PTK. And finally, our staff members, Erica Fuller, Carrie Baldwin, and Nate Wadman were among the Community College Systems Commitment to Excellence Award winners. And with that, I'm going to wrap up. That was a lot of news and a lot of information. I really appreciate your attention this morning. And I think we have just a few minutes. I'm going to invite Jim Mancall in. Jim, do we have questions I might address?
Yeah, we have a couple of questions that came in. Let me try to put them together. One is to go back to the book club project that you and Tico are coordinating. And there's a suggestion that we create a professional library to make those books available. So I wanted to put that out there. Going back to COVID, there was a question from a faculty member about, with safety in mind, is there a threshold to move courses that are currently face-to-face online?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And the answer is really no. There is no clear threshold. We've had some conversations about this with the public health department to say, at what point would you start making recommendations or changing recommendations? And that's just really not a number that they can put their finger on and say here. I think it really depends on the trajectory of the disease, how many cases are happening. I think that the number one issue that they are paying attention to, and both city and state leaders are paying attention to, are what our hospitalizations look like. And I think the number one concern is making sure that we preserve hospital access and hospital facility room for those who are sick and need it. So if you were to track this, and anybody can do this, you can go to the El Paso County Health Department and you can look at their dashboards. I think the most important dashboard to pay attention to is hospitalizations. You'll see right now they're pretty low in El Paso County, even though cases have been going up. But that will be the driver, I think, that causes leaders to say, you're going to have to pull back. And so, but there is no magic number on there that says when that could happen.
There's a question about returning to COVID. What is the acceptable level of allergies, sneezing, coughing, etc., to be on campus?
I'm sorry, but I'm unable to answer that. But I will say that, through all of this, patience, kindness, empathy, understanding are going to be just critical to getting us through this time. We are asking people to absolutely not come to campus if they're sick. And it is perfectly acceptable and appropriate that faculty pass that message on to your classes. If you have a student you're concerned about, you could certainly have a private conversation with that student to ask, are you experiencing allergies or other illness? I think in terms of our employees, I'm trusting that people are making the right decisions, and I trust that our students will as well. And so I would encourage you to have conversations with your classes, to talk about this, to talk about what the options are if someone is experiencing illness, how they can stay connected and current with your class. But there's not going to be a number of sneezes or a number of coughs that we can put our finger on and say, this is okay and this isn't. It's just going to be managing this case by case and really coming at it with a lot of patience, kindness, and empathy.
There was a suggestion or a question about using the HERF funds. Could the HERF funds be used to hire e-learning and ITSS folks who provide critical support for both students and faculty?
Well, I know we've added significant staff in ITSS. I'm not as sure about e-learning, but in general, we have not used HERF funds for that because we felt that those positions should be permanent. So I think we may have a few tech support folks that were hired with HERF funds, but mostly in those areas, we're making permanent investments from the college to increase their capacity to support us. And certainly COVID has created a lot of new demands for e-learning and ITSS. So we've remained open to whatever needs those departments have had. I don't think we've said no to any requests from any department really at this point for additional support.
Here's a question about returning to Barnes and Noble, taking over the bookstore operations. And the question is, what will happen to the bookstore spaces on the Centennial and Rampart Range campuses?
Oh, great question. They will continue to operate as bookstores. So what students experience now walking into the bookstore at Centennial and Rampart Range will look exactly the same in October once Barnes & Noble takes over that space. Although what's really going to be different this year is because of the work we did around the free textbooks, we're mostly going to be delivering the textbooks to people, to our students, shipped directly to their homes. So there probably will be quite a bit less traffic and less textbooks on shelves in the bookstore than there has been in the past.
Let's stick with the theme of textbooks. There's a question that students are saying they have not yet received their textbooks for the school year. What guidance can we give students as to how and when they will gain access to course materials?
My expectation is most of those deliveries are happening in this week. If anybody, Laurel Davies or anybody else has additional information, would love it if you could chime that into the chat as well.
Here's a suggestion about Adobe subscriptions for students. Is that a consideration, a possibility?
I would need more information. So Adobe subscriptions for students is a new idea for me. I would love to hear more about that. If the person writing that, if you want to send an email perhaps to myself, to Jackie Gators Jordan, about how that would be helpful and what's important about it, we'd love to hear from you.
And just a follow-up, Laurel comments in the chat that books will start shipping approximately Wednesday. Students should receive an email in their student email about their shipment. There's also some follow-up comments on Adobe from Cyril in the chat. Question, what is happening with the renewal of our Respondus contract?
I don't know. I don't know what the Respondus contract is.
I'm afraid I can't fill in that one either.
If the person asking, if you want to reach out to me individually, or you might include Dwayne Reese on that, some of our finance folks around contracting, we can try to run that down and find out what that is. It might be something pretty specific to a given area.
And Jackie Gators Jordan also suggests that there are suggestions for student support that folks can contact her as well. Jackie also comments she's meeting with a rep from Respondus later today. So Respondus turns out to be our lockdown browser for online testing.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I recall now.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to wrap up here because I think we're right at time, and I just want to leave everybody in attendance with a thought, please. As I think about emerging from the pandemic and the role that Pikes Peak has, there is no institution in our region as powerful as we are at helping people get where they want to be in life. It is a noble mission that we have to educate people. It also is an incredibly practical and powerful mission that we have. So as school starts this fall, with all the challenges we have out there, do keep in mind and wear proudly the Pikes Peak Community College banner, because there is no organization that can have the impact that we have of helping people move from where they are to where they want to be in life and in the world. And we give people access to self-sufficiency in remarkable ways, and not just self-sufficiency. I'm going to leave you with just this one last story. This past week, by happen chance, I met a woman named Margaret Allen. And Margaret grew up in a low income, she had one parent working, blue collar job in Michigan, and she attended Ontario Community College. And she later finished Ontario, graduated from there, went on to get a bachelor's degree, went into the real estate business, and ended up becoming the CEO of RE/MAX International. So not just a local office, but she was the CEO of the largest real estate company in the country. She took RE/MAX public. She made a fortune from the selling of RE/MAX stock and retired very young to become a philanthropist. But Margaret Allen represents so many of our students who can attend and have access, maybe the only opportunity they have for higher education, perhaps, but can start here and can literally go anywhere. And we get to change people's lives in profound ways. And we get to open opportunities to people and create opportunities for people to go literally anywhere from here. And we've all seen it. And we know the stories of our graduates and the remarkable things that they've accomplished. So as you launch into fall semester, be mindful of the opportunity we have and the privilege we have and the daunting responsibility we have to care for people's dreams, to help them reach those dreams, and to show people how they can be successful at the endeavor of going to college. And with that, I will wrap up. I know we had a lot of questions that perhaps did not get answered. We will capture those from the chat, and I will personally or folks on my team will write back out to you with additional information about things that we were not able to address in the time we had here this morning. But thank you all for attending. I'm glad you're here. Welcome back to fall semester. We're going to have a great semester together.